Welcome to the Body of Art Show with your host, professional fine artist and holistic art coach, Catherine Lucas. Join Catherine and her expert guests as they share insights and inspiring stories of transformation that will help you develop self-mastery and truly hone your craft. Now, learn to become the masterpiece that you are with your host, Catherine Lucas.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the Body of Art Show. I'm your host, Catherine Lucas. In honor of our Independence Day coming up in the United States, I want to dedicate today's show to the topic of independence and freedom and what it means and what it takes to live a liberated life. But before we begin, I just want to let you know how much I really appreciate you all taking the time out of your busy day to be here. I know your time is precious, and I want to give you as much value as I possibly can during our time together so that you leave feeling inspired and empowered. I also appreciate all the wonderful feedback that so many of you have given me about the show. It truly inspires me to be here with you each time and share any experiences, knowledge, or insights that may help you master your passion. I invite you to join me on my Facebook page, Holistic Art Coach Catherine Lucas, and go ahead and like it if you want. On this page, you can ask me questions, share your thoughts, accomplishments you achieved, or even challenges that you're currently facing. I encourage you to post your requests for future topics you would like to have on the show. As always, you can connect with me at my website, bodyofart.net. I put a link to my Facebook page on my website so that it's easy for you to find. If you're interested in finding out more about the artwork I create, you can find me at catherinelucasart.com and on Instagram at catherinelucasart and follow me there if you wish. Now, before we begin, I'd just like to remind you each time that the Body of Art show is intended for educational, inspirational, and motivational purposes. All thoughts and opinions expressed in this episode are my own reflections on the topic and don't purport to replace any other viewpoints. So absorb what resonates with you today and just release the rest. Now enjoy the replay on our ticket to freedom. So what does it mean to have true independence and freedom? The word independence is comprised of two words, in and dependence. In means within or inner, which represents the self, and dependence means reliance on or need for. To be independent is essentially to be self-reliant, self-government, or self-determining. Basically, freedom from dependence. A truly independent person is a self-empowered person who relies on their own resources for peace, harmony, and happiness despite their outer conditions. Being truly independent requires self-realization, which is defined as the fulfillment by oneself of the possibilities of one's character or personality. Independent also means to be separate, detached, or unconnected. However, it's not referring to being separate from our fellow human beings. Rather, it means being detached or unaffected by outside conditions or influences in fulfilling our personal needs, that we don't rely on someone else or something else to fulfill us. When we're disconnected from ourselves, imbalance happens and we look for others to become responsible for our peace and happiness. This is known as codependency, and there's no freedom in this disempowered place. Being independent is not about me versus you, or us versus them, or even me here versus God or spirit out there. To be independent, or better yet self-realized, is to know that you and God or spirit are one. Paramhansa Yogananda defines self-realization as the knowing in body, mind, and soul that we are one with the omnipresence of God, that we do not have to pray that it comes to us, that we are not merely near it at all times, but that God's omnipresence is our omnipresence, that we are just as much a part of God or spirit now as we will ever be. All we have to do is improve our knowing. Now, we can't experience freedom unless we're truly independent or self-realized. Freedom also means independence, and the two words are often used interchangeably. Just about every person on the planet desires to be and act freely, to do or say what they want, when they want, and how they want, and live their lives the way they desire. But if we are not self-realized, then our actions can become obstacles to achieving our freedom. All too often we desire freedom and independence, but our thoughts and actions come from a place of separation and codependency. If we're disconnected or out of alignment from our true self or spirit, then our actions in pursuit of freedom can become a liability and consequently hinder our liberty. How is this? Because if we're dependent on what others think of us and rely on others to fulfill us, then we become reactionary in our encounters with them when we're not happy or fulfilled. We blame them for what is lacking in us. When we point our accusatory fingers at others and place blame on them for what's lacking in us, we end up pushing them away even further, creating more separation and disconnection. Also, when we're not self-realized, our freedom of belief can be something we impose on others. Collectively, this means that we become disconnected and disempowered as communities and societies. Freedom is impossible to attain from a place of disconnection and disempowerment. While freedom may be our inalienable right, it's not necessarily inevitable. Individually and collectively, our freedom is derived from our responsibility to one another. Eleanor Roosevelt once said, "Freedom makes a huge requirement of every human being. With freedom comes responsibility. For the person who is unwilling to grow up, the person who does not want to carry his own weight, this is a frightening prospect." So with freedom, there is great responsibility. Since true independence and freedom is attained through self-realization, then the number one thing we need to consider is making self-care a priority. In fact, it's our responsibility to do so. We have a lot of programming in our society about how we need to take care of others, even at our own expense, that self-care is selfish. We tend to think if we want to be good parents, spouses, children, or friends, we have to sacrifice ourselves. We think we're being good and altruistic when we put others first over us. But if we aren't taking care of ourselves and we aren't healthy, we can't possibly offer someone else our best. In fact, we're not being good or altruistic at all when we put others first at our own expense. We are actually doing the people we love a great disservice, because when we don't put our needs first, we're cheating them out of the very best version of ourselves. The way we best serve the people we love is to bring our A game to them. We are a contribution to our loved ones and others when we have the energy to be alive and engaged with them. We can't do that when we're overworked, overcommitted, exhausted, and depleted. To be the best version of yourself, you cannot pour water from an empty pitcher. You cannot put everyone else's oxygen mask on before putting on your own. You cannot put yourself last on the to-do list while giving everything you've got to everyone else. That's being a martyr, and there's no liberty or freedom in martyrdom. So when you neglect self-care, your loved ones end up being shortchanged. They don't get the highest version of you. Instead, they get a worn-down, empty shell version of you. Remember, if we're depleted and out of balance within ourselves, we rely on others for our fulfillment and become a drain on them. Being disempowered has a ripple effect, disempowering others in our family and community. And this is why self-care is responsibility. When we nourish and fulfill ourselves, we automatically help others do the same. As we become independent and free, we inspire independence and freedom in others. Now, most of us have never considered that putting ourselves first is the greatest way to give the best of ourselves to others while remaining free and independent. In fact, when I first work with clients, I have them create a list of their top 5 priorities in life, and unfortunately, most times the list doesn't include them. So in honor of Independence Day, I encourage you to make a list of your top 5 priorities in life and include yourself somewhere on that list, preferably in the number 1 spot. Then I want you to review the next 7 days on your calendar and make a list of activities scheduled that support your top 5 priorities. What are those things that you have on your calendar that are a yes to the things that are the most important in your life? After that, I want you to make a list of activities you have scheduled that are not supporting those top 5 priorities. Choose at least one of those activities and cancel it in the next 24 hours. My clients have found this exercise very useful in helping them to become a priority in their own life. I like to call it the honoring your yes and no calendar. It's a reminder to schedule in time for your own self-care, and when it's on the schedule, taking action toward it is a lot easier. When you practice it, you'll realize that while there isn't time for everything, you can always make time for the most important things in your life. Now, as we wrap up today's show, I want to remind you that taking care of yourself is not a luxury, but a responsibility. It's a responsibility not only to your own well-being, but also for the well-being of our families and communities at large. On a larger scale, self-care and liberation aids in planetary liberation. The number one thing that all of us can do for the planet is to make self-care a priority. Empowerment and liberation are achieved when we are in alignment with our body, mind, and soul. Thank you all for listening to the show today. I really appreciate you all taking the time to be here and would love to hear any comments you have about today's episode. You can do this by subscribing to the Body of Art Show on SoundCloud, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, or TuneIn Radio and leave any comments there. I invite you to leave your review and ratings on the Body of Art Show as well from any of these platforms. Don't forget to join me on my Facebook page, Holistic Art Coach Catherine Lucas, to let me know what you think about today's episode. And remember, you can always connect with me on my website, bodyofart.net. That's spelled BODYOFART.net. Here you can find all of my previous episodes and opt in for my newsletter. That way, every show will be sent directly to your inbox so that you don't have to go looking for it each time. Meanwhile, please stay tuned for more insights, advice, and inspiration in our next episode. Until next time, I want to leave you with this one masterpiece of insight from Viktor Frankl, who found personal freedom in the confines of a Nazi concentration camp. He wrote, "Between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space is our power to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and freedom." On that note, I empower you to take charge of your heart and become the masterpiece that you are.
You've been listening to The Body of Art Show, hosted by Catherine Lucas. The Body of Art Show has been brought to you by Body of Art Enterprises Incorporated, your source for individualized art mentorship and coaching. Our mission is to educate and support aspiring artists to step into their own personal power and master their passion. To learn more, go to bodyofart.net.